This foundation serves children with cancer. We do not accept donations from people who look like they need donations themselves. Security, get this man out of here before he contaminates my guests. Caroline Whitfield flicked her manicured fingers toward the man in the faded t-shirt like she was brushing crumbs off her Chanel sleeve. Her diamond earrings caught the morning light as she turned her back on him. Slow, deliberate, making sure every person in that hotel lobby saw her dismiss him like trash on a sidewalk. The man did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He did not even lift his hands. He just looked at her with eyes so calm and so deeply sad that the bellhop standing 6 feet away would later tell reporters it was the saddest face he had ever seen on a living person. The woman had no idea. She had absolutely no idea that the man she had just thrown out of the Montage Beverly Hills was Keanu Reeves. That the wrinkled paper in his jacket pocket was a signed check for $15 million for her children's cancer program. And she had even less idea that her own daughter Olivia was lying in a hospital bed at that very moment in a cancer ward that existed only because the man she just called contamination had been quietly funding it for 7 years. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you absolutely cannot miss. The morning of September 14th started the way every morning started for Keanu Reeves. Quiet, simple. A cup of black coffee on the back porch while Biscuit, his rescue mutt, sprawled across his bare feet and the canyon filled with the first pale light of a Los Angeles dawn. He wore what he always wore, a faded charcoal gray t-shirt that had been washed so many times it was almost translucent at the shoulders. Faded blue jeans with a small tear above the left knee. Scuffed black motorcycle boots that had carried him through film sets and city streets for more years than he could count. His dark hair fell to his shoulders with a few silver strands catching the porch light, and his 3-day stubble made him look like someone who slept on park benches rather than in a house in the Hollywood Hills. His motorcycle was in the shop again. Second time this month. A corroded fuel line this time. He could have called a car service. He could have asked his manager to send someone. Instead, Keanu Reeves pulled up a rideshare app on his phone and ordered a standard car to the Montage Beverly Hills. $7.40. He tipped the driver $12 because the man mentioned his daughter had just started college. The meeting had been arranged 3 months ago, not by Keanu, but by his attorney, a quiet man named Gerald Marsh who handled the donations Keanu never wanted anyone to know about. For 7 years, Keanu had been the anonymous donor behind the Pediatric Cancer Research Program at Cedars-Sinai. $5 million a year. No press releases. No galas. No plaques with his name. Just a wire transfer every January from a trust called Quiet River and a handwritten note that said the same thing every time. For the kids who fight harder than any action hero I have ever played. This year was different. Gerald had suggested formalizing the arrangement. A long-term commitment. $15 million over 3 years, with provisions for expanding the treatment wing and funding experimental therapies. The check was already signed. It sat folded in the inside pocket of a canvas jacket Keanu had thrown over his arm. The jacket itself, so old and creased that it looked like something pulled from a thrift store donation bin. The meeting was with the Whitfield Foundation. They managed the charitable arm of the hospital's cancer program. Their CEO, a woman named Caroline Whitfield, had been told only that a major donor wanted to meet. Gerald had sent her office a full briefing packet 3 weeks earlier. Keanu's name, his history with the program, the proposed terms, everything. Keanu Reeves did not know that Caroline Whitfield had never opened that packet. The Montage Beverly Hills lobby smelled like fresh gardenias and furniture polish. Marble floors reflected the chandelier light in patterns that looked like scattered diamonds. Keanu walked through the revolving door at 2 minutes before 9, his boots making soft sounds on the stone. He carried his canvas jacket over one arm and a small leather duffel bag on the other shoulder. His thin, faded woven bracelet caught a beam of light as he adjusted the bag strap. The lobby was already busy. A concierge directed a couple toward the restaurant. A bellhop wheeled a brass luggage cart past a cluster of men in suits. Near the tall windows overlooking the courtyard garden, Two people stood talking. One was a man in his mid-60s with silver hair and a navy blazer. Edward Prescott. Keanu recognized the name from Gerald's notes. Longtime donor to the Whitfield Foundation. Gave $2 million a year for the pediatric hospice wing. The other was Caroline Whitfield. Keanu had never met her in person, but he knew her from the foundation's website. 48 years old. Platinum blonde hair pulled back, so tight it looked painful. A cream Chanel suit that probably cost more than some people's monthly rent. Diamond earrings that caught the chandelier light every time she moved her head. She stood with the practiced posture of someone who had been photographed at charity events since childhood. Her mother sat on 3 hospital boards. Her father had built a real estate empire in the 1980s. Her husband, Dr. Thomas Whitfield, was one of the top pediatric surgeons on the West Coast. Their daughter Olivia was 16 years old and currently recovering from spinal surgery at the very hospital Keanu had been funding for 7 years. Caroline Whitfield did not know any of this about the man walking toward her. She had not opened the briefing packet. She had not Googled the donor's name. Her assistant Rebecca Moore had confirmed the 9 o'clock meeting 3 weeks ago and placed the folder on Caroline's desk. Caroline had glanced at the calendar entry, saw major donor meeting, and assumed whoever it was would be grateful for her time. She definitely did not expect a man in a faded t-shirt and torn jeans. Keanu approached the 2 figures by the window. He extended his right hand. The thin woven bracelet slid down his wrist. Ms. Whitfield. Keanu, we have a 9 o'clock about the Children's Cancer Program. Caroline turned. Her eyes traveled from his boots to his jeans, to his t-shirt, to his face. The journey took about 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, something shifted behind her eyes. The polished smile did not just fade. It curdled. Her upper lip pulled back slightly, the way a person recoils from a smell. She did not take his hand. She put both hands in the pockets of her Chanel blazer and took one deliberate step backward. The step was small, but the message was enormous. Every person within 30 feet saw it. The bellhop froze with his hand on a luggage cart. A woman on a lobby couch lowered her magazine. A concierge behind the desk stopped typing mid-keystroke. "Excuse me, we'll let you in here." Her voice carried. It was designed to carry. 20 years of fundraising galas and donor dinners had taught Caroline Whitfield exactly how to project authority across a room, and she used every decibel of it now. Keanu kept his hand extended. His expression did not change. "Ms. Whitfield, my attorney Gerald Marsh arranged this meeting. Your office confirmed 3 weeks ago. I do not know any Gerald Marsh." Caroline's eyes narrowed. "And this is a private meeting for serious donors to a children's cancer foundation." She looked him up and down again, slower this time, making sure he felt every inch of her judgment. "We do not accept donations from people who look like they need donations themselves." She paused, let the words settle, then added, louder, so that the group of businessmen near the elevator bank could hear. "Do you even know what this foundation does? We fund cancer treatment for children. This is not a drop-in center for people who need a shower and a warm meal." The businessmen turned. A woman near the coffee station set down her cup. Phones began emerging from purses and pockets. Not obvious. Not yet. But the lobby was watching, and some of it was recording. Edward Prescott set down his coffee cup. "Caroline, perhaps we should check with your office. There may have been a scheduling overlap." Caroline held up one manicured finger without looking at Edward. Her eyes stayed locked on Keanu, or rather, locked on his t-shirt, as if the faded charcoal fabric personally offended her. "There is no overlap. This man was not invited. I can see that clearly." Keanu Reeves lowered his hand. Not quickly, not in anger. Slowly, the way you lower something fragile back to a shelf. His deep brown eyes settled on Caroline's face, and in them was not rage, not embarrassment, not even surprise. Just a sadness so complete that Edward Prescott would later describe it to his wife as the look of a man who had seen this exact cruelty 1,000 times and still felt it every single time. "Ms. Whitfield," Keanu said quietly, "if you check the briefing packet your assistant sent, you will find everything you need." Briefing packet. Caroline laughed. It was a sharp sound, like a heel cracking tile. You mean whatever pamphlet you printed at a copy shop to talk your way in here? She turned to the concierge desk. Her voice rose another notch, loud enough now that every person in the lobby could hear. Security. Get this man out of here before he contaminates my guests. Two men in dark suits approached from the far end of the lobby. The older one was Frank Patterson, 58 years old, a former Marine who had worked hotel security for 11 years. His face showed exactly how much he did not want to do what he was about to do. He had seen Keanu's face somewhere before. A movie, a news article, something. It gnawed at the back of his mind like a word stuck on the tip of his tongue. The younger guard walked a step behind, one hand near the radio on his belt, jaw set with the practiced authority of someone who had not yet learned that authority is not the same thing as being right. Ma'am, is there a problem? Frank's voice was professional, but his eyes kept drifting to Keanu's face. The familiarity was maddening. Yes, Caroline said, pointing at Keanu the way you point at litter on the floor. This man is disrupting a private event. He is not on the guest list. He is not a donor. And frankly, he is making our actual guests uncomfortable. She lowered her voice just enough to sound confidential, but kept it loud enough for the nearest 10 people to hear. I do not know if he is confused or just looking for a free meal, but I want him gone. Now, the lobby had gone quiet in the way lobbies go quiet when something uncomfortable is happening. Not silent. Worse than silent. The muffled, held breath, quiet of people pretending not to watch while watching intently. A businessman near the elevator slid his phone from his breast pocket. A mother sitting with her toddler on a lobby couch instinctively pulled the child closer. Not because Keanu was threatening, but because the tension in the air had become something you could feel on your skin. Frank Patterson looked at Keanu Reeves. Keanu looked back at him. Neither man spoke for a moment. Keanu's deep brown eyes held no anger, no resentment, just that same bone-deep sadness, the sadness of a man who understood that this moment was not about him, not really, but about something much older and much harder to fix. Then Keanu shifted the duffel bag on his shoulder and nodded once. No need for an escort. I can find my way out. He turned and walked toward the lobby doors. His boots made no sound on the marble. His back was straight. His pace was unhurried. Not fast enough to suggest retreat. Not slow enough to suggest defiance. Just the measured walk of a man who had decided that his dignity did not require anyone else's permission. He passed the bellhop, who stared with his mouth slightly open. The young man would go home that night and tell his roommate about the incident, and his roommate would pull up a photo on his phone and say, "Dude, that was Keanu Reeves," and the bellhop would sit on the edge of his bed and replay the entire scene in his mind with the nauseating clarity of a man who had watched injustice happen and done nothing. He passed a woman on a lobby couch whose phone was already raised, the red recording light blinking steadily. Her name was Patricia, and she was a dental hygienist from Pasadena on her anniversary weekend. She had not planned to record anything that morning. She had been checking her email. But something about the way Caroline flicked her fingers, something about the casual cruelty of the gesture, had made her press record without thinking. That 3-minute and 47-second video would change her life, too. It would be shared 52 million times. He passed a mother holding a toddler who looked at Keanu with wide, confused eyes. The toddler reached out one small hand as Keanu walked by, the instinctive reach of a child towards someone who seemed kind. Keanu paused for half a second, touched the child's outstretched fingers with one gentle tap, then kept walking. Frank Patterson walked beside him, not touching him, giving him space. The younger guard had fallen back, suddenly unsure. At the door, Frank leaned close. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Sir, I am real sorry about this. I'm just doing my job. And sir, I know who you are. It just came to me. I am sorry. I should have said something." Keanu stopped. He looked at Frank, and for the first time, something close to a smile crossed his face. Small, tired, but real. You're doing your job. I understand. Do not apologize for that. And Frank, Keanu put a hand briefly on the older man's shoulder. You did nothing wrong. Remember that. Frank Patterson's eyes glistened. He blinked it away, stood straighter, nodded once. Keanu Reeves stepped into the September morning. The automatic doors whispered shut behind him. The bright California sunlight swallowed his figure, and for a moment he stood on the sidewalk, eyes closed, letting the warmth settle on his face. A bus passed on the street. The sound of traffic and distant construction and a dog barking somewhere filled the space that the lobby's artificial quiet had left behind. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Gerald. Keanu. Caroline's office just called. They said you left. What happened? Change of plans, Gerald. Cancel the meeting. Cancel the formal agreement. Keep the annual donation on the original terms. $5 million through the trust. No names. No meetings. But the $15 million commitment. The expansion wing. The experimental therapy funding. Keanu was quiet for a long moment. He watched a bus pass on the street, faces in every window, people going to work, going to school, go to hospitals. The kids still get the money, Gerald. They always get the money, just not through her. He hung up, stood on the sidewalk for another minute. Then he walked 2 blocks to a convenience store, bought 2 coffees and a bag of sandwiches, and sat down on the curb next to a homeless man named Wallace who was leaning against the wall with a cardboard sign and bare feet. Wallace was 63 years old. His thin gray hair was matted against his scalp. His face was weathered and deeply tanned from years of sleeping outside. He wore layers of mismatched clothing, a flannel shirt over a torn sweater over a faded dress shirt that still had the ghost of a monogram on the pocket. His feet were bare and cracked. Someone had stolen his shoes 3 nights ago while he slept under the overpass on 4th Street. Keanu sat down next to Wallace without asking permission. He did not squat beside him the way people sometimes do when they want to seem kind, but also want to be ready to stand up quickly and leave. Keanu sat, fully, cross-legged on the concrete, the same way he would later sit on the hospital floor with the children. He handed Wallace a coffee and a sandwich. They talked for 20 minutes. Wallace had been a high school English teacher for 19 years before his life collapsed. Divorce, medical debt, a fire that took everything insurance would not cover. He used to teach Shakespeare and Frost and Langston Hughes. He had a gift for making teenagers care about poetry, which is one of the hardest things a human being can do. "What is your favorite poem?" Keanu asked, as if they were 2 men at a coffee shop instead of 2 men on a curb. Wallace thought for a moment. His eyes, which had been dull and vacant, flickered with something. Not quite life, but the memory of life. The road not taken. I know everyone says it is overused, but I watched a 17-year-old boy read it out loud in my class once, and when he finished, he was crying, and he said, "I think I've been taking the wrong road, Mr. Wallace." Wallace's voice cracked. "That boy's a doctor now. Pediatrician. I looked him up once at a library computer." Keanu listened without interrupting. His deep brown eyes were focused entirely on Wallace. Not on the street, not on his phone, on the man beside him. When it was time to go, Keanu took off his canvas jacket and draped it over Wallace's shoulders. The jacket was warm from the sun and from Keanu's body heat. It smelled like coffee and laundry detergent. The signed check for $15 million was still in the inside pocket. Keanu did not remember this until later that evening. He called Gerald in a panic. Gerald called his bank. The check was voided and reissued within an hour. Wallace had not found the check. He had been too busy pressing the jacket against his face, breathing in the smell of clean fabric, a smell he had not experienced in a long time. But the security camera above the convenience store entrance had captured everything. Keanu sitting on the curb, sharing coffee, listening to a homeless man recite poetry, giving away his jacket, walking away in just his faded t-shirt, carrying nothing but the duffel bag. That footage would surface in 48 hours. It would get 78 million views. Inside the lobby of the Montage Beverly Hills, Caroline Whitfield smoothed her Chanel blazer and turned back to Edward Prescott with a brilliant smile. "I'm so sorry about that interruption, Edward. You would not believe how many people try to crash these events. Scammers, honestly. They see the foundation name and think they can wander in and network." Edward Prescott did not smile. He set his coffee cup on the table between them with a careful click. Caroline, that seemed unnecessarily harsh. Harsh. Caroline waved her hand. You have to be firm with these people, Edward. Otherwise, they think they can take advantage. Now, about the Henderson pledge, I wanted to discuss the timeline for. Edward was already standing. His navy blazer creased at the shoulders as he picked up his briefcase. We can discuss it another time. I have an appointment. He shook her hand quickly, professionally, and left. Caroline watched him go with a small frown. Then she shrugged, pulled out her phone, and texted Rebecca. That man who just left. The one in the t-shirt. Make sure his information is deleted from our system. Do not want that type thinking they can waste our time again. She slipped the phone back in her purse and walked toward the elevator, heels clicking on the marble, completely unaware that she had just destroyed the only lifeline her foundation had. At 10:17 that morning, Rebecca Moore knocked on Caroline's office door. Her face was the color of printer paper. Ms. Whitfield, I need to talk to you about the meeting this morning. Caroline did not look up from her laptop. Make it quick. I have the board call in 20 minutes. The man at the Montage. The one security escorted out. What about him? Did you open the briefing packet I put on your desk 3 weeks ago? Something cold formed in Caroline's stomach. She stopped typing. Why? Rebecca set a tablet on the desk. The screen showed a Forbes article. The headline read, Keanu Reeves. The quiet philanthropist Hollywood does not talk about. Caroline stared at the photograph. Same face. Same dark hair to the shoulders. Same deep brown eyes. Same thin woven bracelet on the left wrist. Same person she had thrown out of the hotel lobby 90 minutes ago. Her eyes scanned the article. The words blurred, then snapped into focus. Net worth, over $400 million. Career spanning 4 decades. Known for extreme humility and anonymous charitable giving. Has donated an estimated $100 million to cancer research, children's hospitals, and homelessness programs. Rides the subway. Takes the bus. Gives away seats in first class. Never wears suits. Never announces donations. Once built an entire playground for a children's hospital and told them to say it was from a friend. Caroline's hands began to shake. The diamond rings on her fingers clinked against the desk. Rebecca, tell me this is a different person. Rebecca reached over and scrolled down. There was a photograph of Keanu Reeves sitting cross-legged on a hospital floor, talking to a child in a wheelchair. He was wearing a faded t-shirt. The same t-shirt. Next to it, another photo. Keanu visiting a cancer ward. Keanu handing teddy bears to children. Keanu sitting in a hallway with a mother whose eyes were swollen from crying, just sitting with her, saying nothing. The meeting was confirmed 3 weeks ago, Rebecca whispered. Your attorney's office sent the full briefing. He was coming to formalize a $15 million donation for the pediatric cancer expansion. $15 million. The number hung in the air like smoke. Without that money, the treatment wing expansion would stall. 200 children currently on the wait list for experimental therapies would have to be transferred to other hospitals. The program Caroline had built her reputation on, the program she put on every press release and every gala invitation, would shrink instead of grow. Oh my God. Caroline stood so fast her chair rolled backward and cracked against the window. Oh my God. Oh my God. She grabbed her phone, found a contact Rebecca had entered months ago. Dialed with fingers so slippery with sweat she had to wipe them on her skirt. It rang 4 times. Voicemail. Mr. Reeves, this is Caroline Whitfield. I believe there was a terrible misunderstanding this morning. I would love to reschedule our meeting at your earliest convenience. Please call me back at your earliest. She hung up. Called again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Rebecca, get Daniel in here. Now. Daniel Crawford, the foundation's deputy director, arrived in 4 minutes. He was 50 years old, silver at the temples, and had spent his entire career in nonprofit management. He was holding a coffee that he forgot to drink the moment Rebecca told him what happened. Please tell me this is not real, Daniel said, reading the Forbes article on his phone. Please tell me you did not throw Keanu Reeves out of a hotel lobby. I did not know who he was. He showed up dressed like A. He did not finish her sentence. He is famous for that, Caroline. Daniel's voice rose in a way she had never heard before. Keanu Reeves does not wear suits. He rides the bus. He gives away his shoes. This is the most documented thing about him. Everyone knows this. I did not Google him. You did not Google a donor offering $15 million? Caroline sank into her chair. The leather squeaked. The sound made her flinch. Can we fix this? Daniel set down his untouched coffee. His jaw tightened. I reached out to Gerald Marsh, his attorney. The formal agreement is dead. Keanu withdrew the proposal. He told Gerald the annual donation will continue through the anonymous trust, but there will be no expansion funding, no long-term commitment, no meeting, but the children. 200 kids on the wait list. Daniel looked at her. His expression was not angry. It was worse than angry. It was the expression of a man watching someone realize the full weight of what they had done. Keanu Reeves knows about those children, Daniel said quietly. He has known about them for 7 years. He funded the ward they sleep in. That is why he came today. And you called him contamination. Caroline tried Keanu's number again. The line did not even ring. Straight to voicemail. He had blocked her. At 6:43 that evening, Dr. Thomas Whitfield came home. He was still wearing his surgical scrubs. His face was gray. Caroline was sitting at the kitchen island, her Chanel suit wrinkled, her makeup smeared, staring at her phone. She had called Keanu 22 times, sent 9 emails, tried LinkedIn. Nothing. Thomas set his keys on the counter with a careful click. He did not sit down. I heard what happened, he said. Thomas, I know. I'm trying to fix it. Caroline, do you know who funds the oncology wing where I operate? The ward where Olivia had her surgery last week? Caroline looked up. The anonymous donor. The one we have never been able to identify. Thomas's voice cracked. The only time she had heard it crack was when Olivia was first diagnosed. It is him, Caroline. It is Keanu Reeves. He has been funding our hospital's children's cancer research for 7 years. Every piece of equipment in that operating room. Every experimental drug trial. Every child life specialist on the floor. His trust pays for all of it. Caroline's hands went to her mouth. Olivia's room. The room with the mural of the ocean on the wall. The room where she woke up after surgery and said it felt like being inside a painting. Thomas's eyes were wet. He paid for that mural. Specifically requested ocean themes because a nurse told him the children who wake up to blue walls recover faster. Caroline made a sound. Not a word. Not a cry. Something between the two. A sound that came from a place so deep it did not have a name. My daughter is alive because of the research is money-funded, Thomas said. The surgeon who operated on her spine trained on a fellowship he endowed. And you threw him out of a hotel lobby because of his t-shirt. Thomas went upstairs without another word. Caroline sat at the kitchen island until the automatic lights turned off around her. She sat in the dark for a long time. The video surfaced the next morning. Someone in the lobby had recorded the entire confrontation. From Caroline's opening words to the moment Frank Patterson walked Keanu to the door. 3 minutes and 47 seconds of footage, so clear you could read Caroline's lips from across the lobby. It hit 12 million views by noon, 28 million by 6 o'clock, 52 million by the end of the week. The comments were merciless. The headlines were worse. Every entertainment site, every news outlet, every social media account with more than 10,000 followers seemed to have an opinion. Charity CEO throws out Keanu Reeves. Foundation head mistakes Hollywood legend for homeless man. The woman who told Keanu Reeves he was contamination. One comment under the video had 200,000 likes. It read simply, she told the kindest man in Hollywood he was contaminating her guests. I have never seen someone destroy their own life in 3 minutes. Another read, the way he just looked at her, not angry, sad, like he felt sorry for her. That is the difference between class and money. Then the second video appeared. The security camera footage from outside the convenience store. Keanu Reeves sitting on a curb next to a homeless man, sharing coffee, listening, laughing at something the man said, taking off his jacket and draping it over the man's shoulders, walking away in just his faded t-shirt, carrying nothing, his boots scuffing the sidewalk, one hand in his pocket, looking like any other person on any other street in Los Angeles. That video got 78 million views in 4 days. The comments were a mirror image of the first video. If the first showed what cruelty looks like, the second showed what kindness looks like. Together, they became the most shared split-screen comparison of the year. On the left, Caroline Whitfield in her $6,000 Chanel suit, flicking her fingers at Keanu like he was an insect. On the right, Keanu in the same faded t-shirt, sitting on concrete, giving his jacket to a stranger who had nothing. Same man, same morning, same clothes. Two completely different receptions. The contrast did not need commentary. It spoke for itself. Edward Prescott issued a public statement withdrawing his annual $2 million pledge to the Whitfield Foundation. He cited fundamental concerns about organizational leadership and values. 3 other major donors followed within 48 hours. The foundation lost $11 million in pledged funding in 1 week. The board of the Whitfield Foundation held an emergency meeting on a Thursday evening. Caroline was asked to resign as CEO. She did not fight it. She sat in the boardroom she had decorated herself, surrounded by photographs of smiling children she had used for press releases, and signed a resignation letter with a hand that would not stop shaking. Daniel Crawford was appointed interim director. His first act was to write a personal letter to Gerald Marsh, apologizing on behalf of the foundation and expressing hope that the anonymous donor relationship could continue. Gerald responded the same day. The annual $5 million donation would proceed as scheduled. No conditions, no meetings required. The children would not lose their funding. Keanu Reeves never made a public statement about the incident. When a reporter approached him outside a studio lot 3 days after the video went viral, Keanu stopped walking, thought for a moment, and said 7 words. "It was not about me. It never was." Then he got on his motorcycle and rode away. Caroline Whitfield watched the video 20 times. She sat on the floor of her living room at 2 in the morning, the house dark around her, the blue light of her phone casting shadows on the ceiling. The first 10 times, she watched herself, the way her lip curled, the way she flicked her fingers, the way she turned her back. Slow, deliberate. She saw herself from the outside for the first time, and what she saw made her physically ill. The 11th time, she watched the people around her. Frank Patterson's apologetic eyes, the bellhop's shock, the woman on the couch raising her phone, Edward Prescott setting down his coffee with that careful, damning click. The 15th time, she watched Keanu, and she noticed something she had missed every time before. In the moment Caroline said contamination, Keanu did not look at her. His eyes drifted to the left, past her shoulder to the wall behind the concierge desk. A poster hung there, a photograph of children at the hospital. 5 kids in hospital gowns, bald heads for poles beside them, grinning at the camera with the undefeatable joy that only very sick children seem to possess. The poster read, "Hope Lives Here," with the Whitfield Foundation logo beneath it. Keanu was looking at the children, and his eyes were wet. The man she had called contamination was looking at the children he had been saving for 7 years, and he was trying not to cry. Caroline dropped the phone. She pulled her knees to her chest on the living room floor and sobbed. Not the polished, controlled crying of a woman who had spent her life performing composure. The ugly, shaking, gasping kind. The kind that comes when you finally see yourself clearly and cannot look away. 3 weeks passed. Caroline did not leave her house for the first 7 days. She did not answer calls. She did not check email. She sat with Olivia when Thomas brought their daughter home from the hospital, and she watched her girl move carefully through the house in her recovery brace, and she thought about the man who had funded the surgery that straightened her daughter's spine. On day 8, she drove to the hospital, not to the administrative wing, not to the foundation offices, to the pediatric ward, floor 4, the floor with the ocean mural that Keanu had specifically requested. She stood in the hallway outside room 412, where a boy named Derek sat propped up in bed. He was 8 years old. He had leukemia. He was drawing a bird on a piece of paper taped to his food tray. The bird had enormous wings and a tiny body, and it was colored in every crayon the hospital provided. Caroline watched him through the glass window of the door. A nurse walked past. Can I help you? No. I just. No. Thank you. She left, drove home, sat in the driveway for 40 minutes. The next day she came back, stood in the same hallway, watched Derek draw another bird. This one had a hat. On the third day, she put on a plain white blouse and flat shoes. No ueli, no muck-up. She walked to the volunteer coordinator's desk and asked how she could help. The coordinator, a woman in her 60s named Helen Price, looked at her for a long time. You are Caroline Whitfield. Yes. Longer pause. The children need people to read to them. Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Can you read? I can read. Helen handed her a lanyard with a volunteer badge. Do not wear perfume. Some of the children on chemo are sensitive to smells. And leave your phone in your car. When you are with them, you are with them. Caroline took the badge. It was plastic and light, and it felt heavier than anything she had ever held. Her first morning, she sat beside the bed of a 6-year-old girl named Lily. Lily had a purple headband covering where her hair used to be. She was clutching a stuffed rabbit that had been washed so many times its fur was matted flat. Caroline opened a picture book about a bear who lost his hat. Lily watched with enormous eyes. When Caroline finished, Lily tugged her sleeve. Are you somebody's mom? Caroline's throat closed. Yes, I am. Is her kid sick too? She was. She's getting better now. Lily nodded with the gravity of a philosopher. That is good. My mom says getting better is the bravest thing. Caroline read 3 more books. When her shift ended, she sat in her car in the parking garage and cried for 20 minutes. Then she drove home and told Thomas she would be back on Thursday. She went back on Thursday, and the following Tuesday, and every Tuesday and Thursday after that. She read to Lily. She played board games with Derek. She sat with a 13-year-old girl named Sarah who did not want to be read to, but just wanted someone to sit quietly while she listened to music through one earbud and offered the other to Caroline. They listened to 3 songs together without speaking. When Caroline left, Sarah said, "Same time Thursday?" Same time Thursday. Weeks passed. Caroline learned things. She learned that Derek drew birds because his father, who had died 2 years ago, used to take him birdwatching at Griffith Park every Saturday morning. She learned that Lily's mother worked 2 jobs and could only visit on weekends, so the weekdays were long and empty and frightening. She learned that Sarah's favorite song was about a girl who could fly, and that Sarah played it on repeat during chemo because it made her feel like the chemicals flowing into her arm were giving her wings instead of taking her hair. Caroline learned that the children did not care about her Chanel suits or her diamond earrings or her foundation galas or her press releases. They cared about whether she came back. They cared about whether she remembered where they left off in the book. They cared about whether she would sit on the floor cross-legged even though the linoleum was cold and hard, because sitting on the floor meant you were staying. One Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after she started volunteering, Caroline was in the playroom reading to a group of 4 children when Keanu Reeves walked through the door. He did not announce himself. There was no entourage, no cameras, no publicist, just a man in a faded black t-shirt, jeans, and boots, carrying a canvas bag full of coloring books and crayons, walking into a children's hospital the way he had been walking into this particular hospital on the first Tuesday of every month for 7 years. Derek saw him first. The 8-year-old boy dropped his crayon, scrambled out of his chair, and ran across the playroom so fast his 4-pole rattled behind him. Keanu caught him, dropped to one knee, and caught the boy like he had done 100 times, because he had. Keanu, look. Derek held up a piece of paper. A new bird. This one had 2 hats and a scarf. I gave him a friend this time. See? 2 birds. Keanu Reeves studied the drawing with the focus of a man examining a masterpiece. His deep brown eyes moved across every crayon line. 2 hats, Keanu said. That is twice the style. What is the friend's name? That is Gerald. He is the brave one. Keanu laughed. It was a quiet laugh, warm and real. Gerald. Good name for a brave bird. Caroline had stopped reading. The book was open in her lap, but her eyes were on the door. On Keanu kneeling on the linoleum floor, his jeans creased, his boots scuffed, his woven bracelet sliding on his wrist as he held the drawing up to the light. He did not know she was there. He had not seen her yet. His entire world at that moment was an 8-year-old boy and 2 birds wearing hats. Lily tugged Caroline's sleeve. That is the man from the videos. The nice one who gives people his shoes. Caroline could not speak. She nodded. He comes here every month. Lily continued with the matter-of-fact authority of a 6-year-old. He brings coloring books. Last time he taught Derek how to draw a dog. It looked funny, but Derek loved it. Keanu moved through the room. He sat on the floor with a girl in a wheelchair and helped her open a new box of crayons. He high-fived a boy whose head was wrapped in bandages. He spoke quietly with a mother in the corner whose eyes were red and swollen, and whatever he said made her laugh through her tears. Then he turned and saw Caroline. The room did not stop. The children kept coloring. A nurse walked past with a tray of juice boxes. Someone's heart monitor beeped softly down the hall. Life continued, but between Keanu Reeves and Caroline Whitfield, time bent. 10 seconds of silence. 20. Caroline opened her mouth. Mr. Reeves' eye. Keanu's eyes had moved past her. Past her volunteer badge. Past her plain white blouse and flat shoes and face without makeup. His gaze had landed on the hallway beyond the playroom door, where a teenage girl was walking slowly in a recovery brace, one hand on the wall for balance. Is it your daughter? Keanu asked. Caroline turned. Olivia was making her way down the corridor, her physical therapist walking beside her. Yes, Olivia. She had spinal surgery 5 weeks ago. How is she doing? The question was simple. 5 words. But it broke something open in Caroline that she had been holding shut for weeks. Because the man she had called contamination, the man she had thrown out of a hotel lobby, the man who had funded her daughter's hospital ward and her daughter's surgeon's fellowship and her daughter's recovery room with the ocean mural, was standing in front of her asking how her daughter was doing. She is doing well, Caroline managed. She is brave. Keanu nodded. He looked at Olivia through the glass. He did not ask about the foundation. He did not mention the hotel. He did not bring up the video or the $15 million or the word contamination. He said, does she like ice cream? The cafeteria here has pretty good chocolate. Before Caroline could answer, Keanu walked out of the playroom and down the corridor toward Olivia. Caroline watched through the glass as Keanu introduced himself. Olivia's eyes went wide, not with awe, but with the pure, uncomplicated delight of a teenager meeting someone she had watched in movies since she was 10. They walked to the cafeteria together. Keanu matched his pace to Olivia's slow, careful steps. He told her about Biscuit the Rescue, Mutt who stole socks and hid them under the couch. He told her about a motorcycle trip through the mountains where he got lost for 6 hours and ended up at a gas station that only sold beef jerky and batteries. Olivia laughed. The first unguarded laugh she had produced since her surgery. They sat at a small table in the cafeteria. Keanu got 2 cups of chocolate ice cream. They talked for 30 minutes. About movies. About school. About what it feels like to wear a recovery brace. About courage. Courage is not never being scared, Keanu told her. Courage is being scared and walking down the hallway anyway. You're doing that right now. Olivia looked down at her ice cream. You sound like my dad. Then your dad sounds like a smart man. When Keanu left the cafeteria, Olivia was still smiling. Caroline was waiting in the hallway. She had not entered the cafeteria. She had stood at the door the entire time, watching her daughter laugh with a man she had humiliated. Keanu stopped in front of Caroline. The corridor was quiet. A fluorescent light hummed overhead. A janitor pushed a mop bucket past them without looking up. Keanu did not mention the hotel. He did not mention the check. He did not mention the video or the foundation or the word that had been playing on a loop in Caroline's head for 3 weeks. He asked one question. When was the last time you sat with her? Not scheduled a visit. Not sent a text between meetings. Sat with her. Caroline opened her mouth. Closed it. The answer was a wound. She could not remember. She had run a foundation for children with cancer for 12 years. She had raised hundreds of millions of dollars. She had spoken at conferences about pediatric oncology. She had shaken hands with senators and smiled for cameras beside hospital beds. And she could not remember the last time she had simply sat with her own daughter who was recovering from spinal surgery in a hospital funded by the man standing in front of her. The children in these rooms, Keanu said, and his voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of 7 years of hospital visits and coloring books and ice cream cups and sitting on cold linoleum floors. They do not need foundations. They do not need galas. They do not need press releases. They need someone to sit with them and ask about the bird they drew. Keanu Reeves nodded once. Then he walked down the corridor. His boots were silent on the hospital floor. He did not look back. Caroline stood alone in the hallway. Through the glass door of the cafeteria, she could see Olivia finishing her ice cream, still smiling. Caroline walked into the cafeteria. She sat down across from her daughter. The chair scraped on the tile floor. "Tell me about school," Caroline said. "Tell me everything." Olivia looked at her mother, surprised, then cautious, then slowly hopeful. She talked for an hour about her best friend who was learning guitar, about a book she was reading about a girl who survived a shipwreck, about a teacher who believed she could be an architect, about being scared of the surgery and not telling anyone because she did not want to be a burden. Caroline listened. She did not check her phone. She did not glance at the clock. She did not think about the foundation or the board or the donors or the press. She just listened to her daughter, and every word felt like a door opening into a room she had locked years ago and forgotten. That evening, Caroline went home and took off her jewelry. She put the diamond earrings in their velvet case. She hung the Chanel suits in the back of the closet. She put on a plain sweater and jeans. Thomas found her in the kitchen, making pasta. He stopped in the doorway. "You are cooking." Olivia said she missed my pasta. "I used to make it every Sunday when she was little. I stopped when things got busy." Thomas sat at the kitchen island. "When was the last time we had dinner together? Just the three of us?" Caroline turned from the stove. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. "Too long. Way too long." They ate together. Olivia came downstairs slowly, carefully, her recovery brace visible under her sweatshirt. She saw the table set for 3 and the pasta steaming in a bowl and her parents sitting side by side. And she stood in the doorway for a moment with an expression that Thomas would later describe as someone who had been handed something they did not know they were missing. The changes came slowly. Real changes always do. They do not arrive with press conferences or announcements or dramatic turning points. They arrive in the quiet moments. The moments nobody films. The Tuesday mornings. The Thursday mornings. The drives to the hospital in a plain car with no makeup on and a volunteer badge in the console. Caroline volunteered at the hospital every Tuesday and Thursday. She read to Lily. She played card games with Derek. She sat with Sarah and listened to music through one shared earbud. She learned the names of the nurses and the janitors and the cafeteria workers. She learned that the woman who operated the elevator had a granddaughter on the 4th floor, and every morning before her shift she would ride up to 4, peek through the window, and ride back down. The first few weeks were the hardest. The nurses were polite but distant. They had seen the video. Everyone had seen the video. A charge nurse named Gloria, a tall woman with kind eyes and 22 years on the pediatric floor, watched Caroline like a hawk, checking, waiting, trying to determine if this was performance or substance. On Caroline's 3rd Thursday, a boy in room 419 vomited during story time. It splashed across the floor and across Caroline's shoes and across the open book. The boy started crying, not from being sick, but from embarrassment. He was 11 years old and trying so hard to be brave. Caroline set down the book. She knelt beside the bed. She took the boy's hand and said, "You know what? I never liked those shoes anyway." And the ending of that chapter was terrible. "I think you saved us both." The boy laughed through his tears. Gloria, watching from the doorway, uncrossed her arms for the first time. After that, the nurses began to trust her. Not completely. Trust is a river that rises slowly. But they began to include her. They told her which children were having bad days, which ones were scared of the dark and needed the hallway light left on, which ones pretended to be tough but cried after their parents left. Caroline learned things she had never known despite running a cancer foundation for 12 years. She learned them not from reports or board presentations, but from sitting on the floor. She learned that Derek drew birds because his father, who had died 2 years ago, used to take him birdwatching at Griffith Park every Saturday morning. Each bird was a letter to his father. A new hat meant a new adventure he wished they could share. The scarf meant it was cold, and Derek hoped his dad was warm wherever he was. She learned that Lily's stuffed rabbit was named Captain, and Captain had been washed so many times his fur was flat, but Lily would not sleep without him because her mother gave him to her on the first night of chemo and said, "Captain will guard you when I cannot be here." She learned that Sarah played her favorite song on repeat during treatment because it made her feel like the chemicals were giving her wings instead of taking her hair. Sarah was 13 and terrified and braver than anyone Caroline had ever met at any gala in any ballroom in any city. Caroline stopped wearing makeup to the hospital. She stopped wearing heels. She wore flat shoes and volunteer scrubs, and she sat on the cold linoleum floor because that is where the children were. And if you want to be with children, you have to go where they are. Olivia healed. The brace came off after 8 weeks. On the day it was removed, Olivia stood up straight for the first time in months and said, "I feel like a tree that got untied." Caroline and Thomas began eating dinner together every evening. The three of them at the kitchen table. Pasta on Sundays because Olivia said she missed it. Conversation that was not about the foundation or the hospital or the board. Conversation about school and movies and Biscuit the dog they kept seeing in Keanu videos online and whether a three-legged cat could theoretically play basketball. Olivia said yes. Thomas said the cat would need a very small ball. Caroline said she would research this, and Olivia laughed so hard she snorted, and it was the best sound in the world. Every Sunday evening at 7, Caroline called Edward Prescott. He did not answer the first 3 times. The 4th time, he picked up and said one sentence. "Show me. Do not tell me." She showed him. She invited him to the hospital on a Tuesday morning. He walked into the playroom and saw Caroline sitting cross-legged on the floor with Lily in her lap, reading a book about a rabbit who built a rocket ship. Caroline did not stand up when Edward entered. She did not perform. She finished the page because Lily wanted to know what happened next. Edward watched for an hour. When he left, he told Daniel Crawford he was reinstating his pledge. Full amount, $2 million. 6 months after the lobby incident, on a Tuesday morning, Keanu Reeves walked into the 4th floor playroom of the pediatric cancer ward carrying his usual canvas bag of coloring books. The room was bright with morning light. 5 children sat around a low table covered in paper and crayons and glue sticks. A woman in volunteer scrubs sat on the floor among them. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. No jewelry, no makeup. There was a streak of blue paint on her cheek and a glob of glue on her sleeve, and a 6-year-old named Lily asleep against her shoulder, one small hand still clutching a crayon. The woman was reading aloud from a picture book. Her voice was soft. She did different voices for different characters. The children were listening with the total concentration that only a very good story can produce. Keanu stopped in the doorway. Caroline looked up. Their eyes met across a room full of sleeping and coloring and quietly healing children. There was no dramatic moment. No speeches. No tears. Just 2 people looking at each other across 6 months of change, and one of them recognizing that the other was not the same person she had been. Derek spotted Keanu first. As always, Keanu. The boy launched himself across the room for pole rattling. He held up his newest drawing. A bird with 3 hats, a scarf, and what appeared to be sunglasses. "This is Gerald III. He's the coolest one yet." Keanu knelt, studied the drawing. 3 hats. That is a statement. I respect Gerald III. He sat on the floor with the children. Caroline continued reading. For 20 minutes, they occupied the same room, doing the same work, sitting on the same cold floor, breathing the same antiseptic hospital air. Keanu colored with Derek. Caroline read to Lily. Sarah offered her one earbud, and Keanu listened to half a song about a girl who could fly and nodded slowly, like the song had taught him something. When the children were taken for their mid-morning treatments, the playroom emptied. Caroline and Keanu sat alone on the floor, surrounded by scattered crayons and crumpled paper. Keanu looked at Caroline, at the paint on her cheek, the glue on her sleeve, the volunteer badge, the flat shoes. The woman who 6 months ago would not touch his hand because she thought he was beneath her, now sitting on a hospital floor with crayon marks on her fingers. Scrambled or fried? Keanu said. Caroline blinked. What? Keanu tilted his head toward the cafeteria. The eggs. At the cafeteria. Scrambled or fried. It is almost 11. The breakfast line closes in 10 minutes. Caroline laughed. It was a surprise sound, wet and cracked and real. Scrambled. Always scrambled. They walked to the cafeteria together. Not quickly. Not slowly. The pace of two people who had spent 6 months arriving at the same place from opposite directions and were now, for the first time, walking side by side. The corridor smelled like disinfectant and instant coffee and the faint sweetness of juice boxes. A nurse passed them carrying a tray of medications. A father walked by holding the hand of a little girl with a bald head and a pink tutu over her hospital gown. The girl waved at Keanu. Keanu waved back. They sat at the same small table where Keanu had sat with Olivia 6 months ago. The cafeteria was half empty at this hour. A janitor mopped in the far corner. 2 doctors hunched over laptops. A mother stared at her phone with a glazed expression of someone who had been waiting for test results for too long. Keanu ordered scrambled eggs for both of them and 2 cups of black coffee. The eggs were institutional and slightly overcooked. The coffee was bitter and too hot. It was perfect. They ate in silence for the first few minutes. Not uncomfortable silence. The silence of 2 people who had run out of small talk because everything between them was too big for small talk. Keanu talked about Biscuit's latest sock theft. The dog had graduated from socks to dish towels and was now working on a bath mat. Caroline laughed. Keanu mentioned that Gerald III's sunglasses were a bold artistic choice. Caroline said she thought the scarf showed real emotional depth. They discussed the relative hat capacity of birds and whether 5 was the structural maximum or if Derek would push the boundary to 6. Then the laughter faded and the cafeteria sounds filled the space, and Caroline set down her fork. Mr. Reeves, I need to say this. I have needed to say it for 6 months, and I need to say it now, sitting at this table with these terrible eggs, because if I do not say it here, I will lose my courage. Keanu set down his coffee. He did not interrupt. What I did to you at that hotel was unforgivable. I judged you by your clothes. I looked at your t-shirt and your jeans and your boots, and I decided in 3 seconds that you were beneath me, that you did not belong in my presence. I treated you like you were less than human. I used the word contamination. She stopped, swallowed. I used that word about you. About a man who has spent 7 years sitting on hospital floors with sick children. About a man who gave away his jacket to strangers on the sidewalk. About a man who bought ice cream for my daughter and asked how she was doing after I had him thrown out of building. Keanu listened. His brown eyes were steady. His hands rested on either side of his coffee cup. He did not look away. He did not nod encouragingly. He did not rush her. He simply gave her the same complete attention he gave Derek's bird drawings and Wallace's poetry and Olivia's stories about school. I cannot take it back, Caroline continued. I will carry that word for the rest of my life. But I can tell you that sitting on that floor changed me. Not the video. Not losing my job. Not the board vote. Not the headlines. Lily changed me. Derek changed me. Sarah and her music changed me. Olivia changed me when she said I seemed actually here. She swallowed hard. You changed me. With one question I could not answer. Keanu was quiet for a long moment. The cafeteria hummed around them. The janitor's mop made soft swishing sounds against the tile. A child laughed somewhere down the hall, bright and sudden, the way only children laugh. The question was not mine, Keanu said. It was yours. You just were not ready to hear it yet. He picked up his duffel bag, slung it over his shoulder. The thin woven bracelet slid down his wrist. You're sitting on the floor now, he said. That is all I needed to see. He walked out of the cafeteria, down the corridor, past the ocean mural he had paid for, past the nurse's station he had funded, past the playroom where Derek was already taping a new drawing to the wall, A bird with 4 hats this time. Because why stop at 3? A reporter was waiting in the hospital parking lot. Young woman. Eager. Microphone. Mr. Reeves, there are reports you have continued funding the pediatric cancer program despite what happened to the Montage. Can you confirm? Keanu stopped. Thought for a moment. The donation was never about her. It was for Derek and Lily and Sarah and Olivia and every kid in that building who does not care what you wear or how much money you have. They just want someone to sit with them and look at their drawings. The reporter pressed. Do you forgive her? Keanu looked past the reporter at the hospital building. 4th floor. The windows where the playroom was. Somewhere behind that glass, a woman in volunteer scrubs was sitting on a cold floor with a 6-year-old who wanted to hear one more story. People deserve to be better than their worst moment, Keanu said. She's sitting on the floor now. That is all I needed to see. He got on his motorcycle. The engine kicked to life with a sound like a heartbeat. He rode out of the parking lot and onto the boulevard, the morning sun catching the silver in his hair. 2 months later, Derek finished his final round of chemotherapy. The doctors said he was in remission. The word remission is a medical term, but in a children's hospital, it is something closer to a sunrise. It means the darkness is lifting. It means the birds get to fly. On his last day at the hospital, Derek woke up early. He had been awake since 5, sitting in his bed with his crayons, working on something he would not let anyone see. The nurses peeked in. His mother peeked in. He covered the paper with both hands and said, "It is not ready yet." At 8 o'clock, he put on real clothes for the first time in months. Jeans, a blue t-shirt, sneakers his mother had bought 2 sizes too big because she said he would grow into them, and he had, even during chemo, which seemed like a small miracle. He walked through the ward saying goodbye to every nurse, every doctor, every volunteer, every child who was still fighting. He gave each one a drawing. Birds. All birds. Each one different. Each one with at least 1 hat. He had been drawing them for weeks, stockpiling them like letters he wanted to leave behind. He gave Gloria, the charge nurse, a bird with a stethoscope around its neck. Gloria, who had seen thousands of children come and go through these halls, who had built a shell around her heart to survive the ones who did not make it, pressed the drawing to her chest and turned away so no one would see her eyes. He gave the cafeteria woman a bird carrying a tiny tray of scrambled eggs. She laughed so hard she had to sit down. He gave Lily a bird that was holding hands with a smaller bird. The smaller bird had a purple headband. Lily understood immediately. She held it against Captain the stuffed rabbit and said, "Now Captain has a friend." He saved 2 goodbyes for last. He found Keanu in the hallway. Keanu was leaning against the wall, waiting for him. He had come early. He had cleared his schedule. He was wearing a faded black t-shirt, jeans, boots, and a thin woven bracelet on his left wrist that caught the fluorescent hospital light. His duffel bag sat on the floor beside him. Derek handed him a drawing. The bird had 5 hats, a scarf, sunglasses, and boots. The boots were drawn with extra care. Each lace was visible. Each scuff mark had been carefully rendered in brown crayon. "This is Gerald V," Derek said. "He is wear your boots. Because your boots are the coolest." Keanu Reeves knelt down. He held the drawing in both hands and studied it the way museum curators study masterpieces. His deep brown eyes moved across every line, every color, every hat. He turned it slightly to catch the light. He nodded slowly, as if confirming something important. "Gerald V is the greatest bird I have ever seen," Keanu said. "And those are definitely my boots. I would recognize them anywhere. Look at the scuff marks. You even got the scratch on the left toe." Derek beamed. "I used brown and gray for the scratches. 2 colors mixed together. That is called artistic technique," Keanu said. "Professional artists do that." They hugged. The kind of hug where the small person holds on with everything they have, and the tall person holds on even tighter because they know what it means to almost lose something. Keanu closed his eyes. His hand rested on the back of Derek's head. And for a moment, the hallway and the hospital and the fluorescent lights all disappeared, and there were just 2 people, one very big and one very small, holding on. When they separated, Derek looked up at Keanu with the serious expression of an 8-year-old about to say something important. "Keanu, Will you still come visit? Even though I will not be here anymore? Keanu put his hand on Derek's shoulder. I will come visit the other kids. And you can come with me. We will bring coloring books. Derek's face split into a grin. Deal. Then Derek found Caroline. She was in the playroom, tidying up crayons. She did this every time she volunteered. Not because it was required, but because she had learned that the small acts matter. The crayons returned to their cups. The paper stacked neatly. The chairs pushed in. Small acts of care for the next child who would sit here and draw and fight and hope. Derek handed her a drawing. Another bird. This one had a smaller bird next to it. The big bird had no hats, but was wearing what appeared to be an apron. The small bird had a purple headband. The big one is you, Derek said, because you always sat with me. And the little one is Lily, because you read to her when her mom could not come. Caroline held the drawing. Her hands trembled. The paper shook slightly, making the birds look like they were moving, flying. She knelt down and hugged Derek, and she did not care that his four-tape caught on her sleeve, or that her tears were falling on his hospital gown, or that Gloria was watching from the doorway and crying too. You're going to do amazing things, she whispered. I know, Derek said with the absolute confidence of an 8-year-old who had beaten cancer and drawn 500 birds and taught a woman in a Chanel suit how to sit on a floor. I'm going to draw birds for everybody. Caroline took the drawing home. She framed it and hung it in her kitchen next to the family photographs, next to the picture of Olivia standing up straight for the first time after a brace was removed, next to a photo of Thomas and Olivia and Caroline at the kitchen table eating Sunday pasta and laughing about whether a three-legged cat could play basketball. Thomas saw the drawing that evening. He stood in front of it for a long time. He leaned closer, studied the details, the apron on the big bird, the purple headband on the small bird, the way their wings were touching. That is a lot of personality for two birds, he said. That is Gerald's family, Caroline said. She paused. I think we're Gerald's family. Thomas put his arm around her. They stood in their kitchen, looking at a drawing of two birds who were clearly very happy. And for the first time in a very long time, the house felt like a home. Not because of the expensive furniture or the art on the walls, or the view of the garden through the French doors. Because of the framed crayon drawing hanging next to the refrigerator. Because of the flat shoes by the front door that had glue and paint on them. Because of the sound of Olivia upstairs playing a song about a girl who could fly. Somewhere across the city, Keanu Reeves rode his motorcycle through Topanga Canyon, the wind carrying the scent of sage and eucalyptus through the golden evening air. Biscuit was at home, probably asleep on the couch, probably on top of a stolen sock. The worn copy of Rilke was in the duffel bag strapped to the back of the bike. Tomorrow he would be on a film set. Tonight he was just a man on a road, thinking about a boy who drew birds and a woman who learned to sit on the floor and a 6-year-old girl who asked, "Are you somebody's mom?" He leaned into a curve, the motorcycle humming beneath him, and somewhere in the dying light, Keanu Reeves smiled. Not because the world was fixed. It was not. But because somewhere in a hospital, a boy named Derek was going home with a box of crayons and a lifetime of birds to draw. Because somewhere in a kitchen, a framed drawing of a bird with 5 hats hung next to family photos. Because somewhere on the 4th floor, Lily was listening to a new volunteer read a story about a bear who found his hat. The measure of a life is not what you build or what you earn or what your name is carved into. It is what you give to the child sitting next to you, the coloring book you bring, the ice cream you share, the floor you sit on, the drawing you hold like it is the most important thing in the world because to the person who made it, it is. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like to support our channel and subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Hit the notification bell because tomorrow's story will leave you speechless. And drop a comment below. Have you ever been judged by how you looked? Have you ever learned to see someone differently? Tell me your story. I will be reading every single one.